Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed.
It's great to be diving in today.
Today, we're really embarking on a journey exploring the deep and complex history of Puerto Rico.
Right, an island may be thought of in simpler terms sometimes, but its story goes back millennia before its current name.
Exactly. Our goal here is to trace these roots, from the very first people there all the way to the complexities we see today.
And to do that, we've got a really interesting mix of sources, historical overviews, some unique cultural takes, detailed timelines.
Stuff that should help us uncover some, well, surprising facts, maybe challenge a few common ideas about the island's past.
Definitely. And we're starting much, much further back than usual narratives tend to go.
Okay, so let's jump right in because something really grabbed me from the sources.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
This assertion about the Ortoiroid people, that they weren't just like pre-Taíno, but the actual foundational layer of civilization there.
Ah, yes. That's presented quite strongly, isn't it?
It is. Almost like a correction or a return to an original rhythm, as one source put it. Why is that distinction so important?
Well, it's a critical starting point, really. The Ortoiroid, they were the first known settlers. We're talking roughly 4,000 years ago.
4,000 years.
Yeah. And their journey started on the South American continent, specifically the Orinoco Valley.
Okay.
They migrated up through Trinidad and Tobago, carrying with them, well, that phrase you mentioned, the original rhythm of civilization.
That's such an evocative description. It speaks to a really ancient movement of people.
It really does.
So who were they, essentially? The sources describe them as Amerindian hunters and fishermen.
Primarily, yes, using stone tools and crucially passing down their history and knowledge orally.
And it's striking how one source insists they did not arrive in Puerto Rico, but rather migrated there.
Right, completing a long journey.
And that they are the root layer, the first sovereigns of the Caribbean coastlines. How does framing it like that change how we see the island's early story?
It fundamentally shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Instead of seeing them as just precursors, they're positioned as the foundation.
And there's archaeological proof for this long migration.
Oh, absolutely. Solid evidence. We find shell middens, burial sites, very distinct stone tools.
Whereabouts?
Well, places like Benoit Trace in Trinidad, and then also in Angostura in Puerto Rico itself. It shows that connection, that arc.
Okay.
And this evidence, it really reinforces the idea that their presence was, well, extensive and, as one source says, undiluted for a very long time before later groups arrived.
Which brings us to that incredibly powerful statement you flagged earlier.
Which one is that again?
The one saying, to claim Taíno identity without acknowledging Ortoiroid origin is to speak from the branch, not the root.
Ah, yes. That's potent.
I do not descend from Taíno. I precede them. I am Ortoiroid. I mean, that's not just history, is it? It feels like a challenge to how we think about lineage itself.
Exactly. It pushes us and you, the listener, to think about how we recognize these really deep foundational identities.
Especially when later cultures, like the Taíno, become, the ones we mostly hear about.
Precisely. It grounds Puerto Rico's story in a much older reality, highlighting a historical memory that's often, frankly, overlooked.
Okay, so the Ortoiroid are the root. But the story doesn't stop there, right? There were other waves of migration.
Correct. Puerto Rico's pre-Columbian history is like a tapestry, woven with different threads over time. After the Ortoiroid, we see the Saladoid people emerge.
Saladoid, where did they come from?
Also migrating from South America, appearing around, 430 to 250 BC. They brought different pottery styles, new agricultural practices.
So another layer gets added.
Exactly. And the layers keep building. We have the Ignieri arriving probably between 120 and 400 AD, again from northern South America.
Okay.
And also the Archaico people, who actually seem to have originated from the same region as the Ortoiroid, interestingly enough.
So you had different groups coexisting.
It seems so. The sources suggest that for a long stretch, between the 4th and 10th centuries AD, the island was shared by the Ignieri and the Archaico.
That paints a picture of a dynamic place even then, with cultural exchange happening.
Definitely. And eventually, this blending, this evolution, leads to the Taíno culture becoming predominant across the island by around 1000 AD.
And the Taíno weren't just a few scattered people, right?
Not at all. Our sources describe a pretty well-organized society. Villages, chiefs, agriculture.
What kind of population are we talking about when Columbus arrives in 1493?
Estimates vary, of course, but generally between 30 and 60,000 Taíno Indians.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, living across the island in villages. They call the island Borican.
Borican, what does that mean?
It means the great land of the valiant and noble lord, a powerful name.
It is. And they had leaders, chiefs.
Yes, important figures like Agwebana, who was a major chief right up until his death around 1510. So this was a thriving, complex society, not some empty land waiting to be discovered.
Right. So we have this vibrant pre-Columbian world established, and then 1493 happens.
Precisely. November 19th, Columbus encounters the island on his second voyage, and everything changes.
The sources paint a pretty stark picture of the impact of Spanish colonization.
Stark is an understatement. The effect on the Taíno population was catastrophic, a massive decline.
Driven by what mainly? Disease?
Primarily European diseases, yes, things the indigenous population had absolutely no immunity to, but also the brutality of forced labor under the encomienda system.
A devastating 1-2 punch.
Truly. And the decline was incredibly swift. By 1520, when King Charles I of Spain officially declared emancipation, well, the Taíno population was already decimated.
So who did the labor then?
That's when the forced importation of enslaved Africans ramps up significantly to replace the lost indigenous workforce.
And one source mentioned an interesting detail about where some of these enslaved people ended up.
Right. It notes that many were later transported to neighboring islands, like Cuba and Guadeloupe, where the sugar plantations, the big agricultural industries, were actually more developed at the time.
Huh. So that affected Puerto Rico's own early economic path.
It certainly seems to have.
And during all this upheaval, settlements start to form, leading to San Juan.
Yes, small Spanish settlements gradually coalesce, and San Juan emerges as the main administrative center.
And we also see the rise of the Jibaro culture around this time.
We do. The sources describe the Jibaro as this distinct group of sort of independent small farmers, often in more isolated inland areas.
Peasants cultivating their own plots, selling goods, living off the land.
Exactly, forming a really unique and enduring part of the island's social identity.
Now, Spain's hold wasn't always secure, was it? Other European powers were circling?
Constantly. As Spain's direct presence sometimes waned, and attacks from the English, French, Dutch increased, the Spanish crown realized Puerto Rico's strategic value.
So they fortified it.
Heavily. They poured resources into turning San Juan, especially Old San Juan, into a major military stronghold, the walled city.
Protecting the harbor for Spain's fleets.
Precisely. It became crucial for controlling the Caribbean sea lanes and protecting the treasure fleets heading back to Spain. The sources call it the Caribbean's most fortified settlement.
And yet, those walls weren't always enough. There was that dramatic Dutch attack.
Ah, yes, 1625, Goodwin Hendricks. That was quite something.
He managed to get past El Morro, the main fortress.
He did. Sailed his fleet of 17 ships right past the cannon somehow into the bay, attacked the city, set parts of it on fire.
Wow, that must have been terrifying.
The sources say it was the worst attack San Juan had experienced up to that point, and it directly led to more fortifications being built, like the big fort on San Cristobal Hill.
A constant cycle of threat and reinforcement.
Very much so. That defined a lot of its early colonial history.
Okay, so moving into the 17th and 18th centuries, the Bourbon dynasty comes to power in Spain. Does that change things for Puerto Rico?
It does bring renewed attention, yes. There's a more concerted effort to develop the island beyond just San Juan.
How so?
Building roads, trying to link up those isolated inland villages with the coastal towns that were growing, like Ponce, Mayaguez, or Arecibo, trying to integrate the island more.
Makes sense. But this growth had unintended consequences for Spain, didn't it?
It did, ironically.
Yeah.
By the late 18th century, these newly connected ports were attracting so many foreign merchant ships, English, French, Dutch, that it started to seriously undermine Spain's strict mercantilist system.
Right, the system where colonies could basically only trade with the mother country.
Exactly. This influx of foreign trade was a direct challenge. So Spain's response was twofold. Double down on exploiting the land, especially for sugar and coffee.
Which meant
bringing in even more enslaved Africans to work those expanding plantations.
And the island's strategic importance just kept growing.
Absolutely. Especially during all those Atlantic wars, the 7 Years' War, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. Puerto Rico was a key piece on the chessboard.
And they successfully defended it. I remember reading about a British invasion attempt.
Yes, April 1797. A major British force tried to take San Juan. They fought hard for nearly 2 weeks, but were ultimately repelled. A significant victory for the Spanish defenders.
It's interesting, though. While other Spanish colonies were starting to rumble with independence movements,
Puerto Rico remained notably loyal to Spain, much more so than, say, Venezuela or Mexico at the time.
and they were even recognized as an overseas province in 1809.
For a time, yes. by the temporary government in Cadiz during the Napoleonic Wars back in Spain. This actually gave islanders the right to elect their first representative to the Spanish parliament, Ramon Power y Giralt. A big step.
But it didn't last.
Sadly, no.
Mm.
King Ferdinand VII was restored to the throne, and he twice overturned these liberal reforms, reimposing absolute monarchy, a real setback for any hopes of greater autonomy.
So more Spanish control again.
Yes, this period actually saw new immigration rules that brought more Spaniards to the island, along with tighter trade regulations. Both things strengthened the Spanish cultural grip.
But amidst all this political back and forth, what was happening with the enslaved population? Any improvements?
Unfortunately, no. Our sources are clear that despite the talk of reform, the status of enslaved people didn't change. And this led to resistance.
Revolts.
Numerous revolts, yes. The most significant one highlighted was in 1821, led by Marcos Lloro.
He's still remembered today, right?
Very much so, in folklore, a symbol of resistance. But actual abolition of slavery wouldn't come for another 50 years, tragically, not until 1873.
Wow, that late.
It was a long, hard struggle. And even after abolition, poverty and political frustration with Spanish rule continued.
Which led to the Grito de Lares.
Exactly. The Cry of Lares uprising in 1868, led by Ramon Emeterio Betances, who's still revered as the father of Puerto Rican independence.
Was that the only major uprising?
There was another significant one in 1897, led by Antonio Matai Luberas. They even briefly raised a flag they called the Puerto Rican flag. But like Lares, it was quickly put down by Spanish forces. The desire for change was there, but Spain held on.
Until 1898, everything changes again.
Dramatically. The Spanish-American War. On July 25th, the U.S. fleet lands at Guanica. Spain is defeated.
And Puerto Rico is ceded to the U.S.
Yes, along with Guam and the Philippines, under the Treaty of Paris. A complete shift in colonial power. The American era begins.
So what did that mean initially? It became a U.S. colony.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It was established as an unincorporated territory. It got its own Supreme Court, a U.S. District Court, and importantly, a resident commissioner, a non-voting member in the U.S. Congress.
But not U.S. citizens right away.
No, that's a crucial point.
Yeah.
U.S. citizenship wasn't granted, or perhaps imposed is a better word, until 1917 with the Jones-Shafroth Act.
And the timing there wasn't accidental.
Not according to our sources. It happened right as the U.S. was preparing to enter World War I, and a primary motivation was to draft Puerto Rican men into the U.S. military.
Right, that fundamentally changes the relationship. And the early American years weren't easy either.
Not at all. The island was hit hard by major hurricanes, plus the global economic disaster of the Great Depression, widespread poverty, hardship.
Which fueled more unrest.
Yes, it definitely contributed to pro-independence sentiments and ongoing tensions with the U.S. authorities. This period saw tragic events like the Ponce Massacre in 1937.
A very difficult time. When did things start to shift towards more self-governance?
After World War II, things began to change. In 1946, President Truman appointed the first native-born governor, Jesus T. Piñero.
That must have been significant.
A major step. And then just a year later, in 1947, Puerto Ricans finally gained the right to elect their own governor.
And who was the first one elected?
Luis Muñoz Marin, a hugely influential figure. He won the popular vote in 1948.
Okay, so elected governor. Then comes the Constitution in 1952.
Right, another massive milestone. The people voted on it. A constitutional convention drafted it on the island.
But there was a catch.
There was. The sources point out that the U.S. Congress actually modified the Constitution before President Truman gave it the final approval.
Ah, so still very much under U.S. oversight.
Absolutely. Governor Muñoz Marin presented this approved Constitution on July 25, 1952. Notice the date, the same day the U.S. troops landed in 1898.
Symbolic.
Highly symbolic.
Yeah.
And this led to the island adopting the official name Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico.
The Associated Free State, or Commonwealth?
Correct. A step toward self-rule, but a status whose exact nature is still debated today.
Because even with the Constitution, the U.S. influence remains strong.
Undeniably. And the decades that followed saw a huge economic transformation, largely driven by U.S. policy and investment, like Operation Bootstrap.
Shifting from agriculture to industry.
Exactly. Moving away from sugar and coffee towards manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and later, tourism. Puerto Rico became a major hub for those industries.
Okay, bringing us closer to the present, what about citizenship roles more recently?
In 2007, a protocol clarified Puerto Rican citizenship, basically, if you're born on the island or born outside to a Puerto Rican parent or an American citizen living there for at least a year.
Got it. Which leads us straight into the big unresolved question, the island's political status.
The perennial debate. It hasn't gone away. Since the late 20th century, there have been, what, 4 plebiscites? Maybe more, depending on how you count them.
Asking whether Puerto Rico should become a U.S. state, independent, or stay as a commonwealth.
Essentially, yes. But none of them have produced a clear, definitive, binding answer that satisfies everyone or leads to decisive action from the U.S. Congress.
So leaders are still looking for some kind of solution.
They are still searching for a status option that can gain consensus both on the island and in Washington.
And the United Nations has weighed in?
Yes, the UN's Special Committee on Decolonization has repeatedly passed resolutions calling on the U.S. to facilitate a process allowing Puerto Ricans to exercise their right to self-determination and independence.
Arguing that more sovereignty is needed to tackle current issues.
Right. They link the status question directly to the island's ability to effectively address its significant social and economic challenges, like the debt crisis, hurricane recovery, and so on.
Wow. What a journey we've taken. From those incredibly deep roots with the Ortoiroid,
Right back 4,000 years.
through all those different layers of settlement, the massive shifts under Spain, then the U.S., right up to these complex, ongoing questions today.
It really underscores the resilience of the place and its people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Constantly adapting, evolving, forging an identity through centuries of change.
Absolutely. And understanding Puerto Rico today really means grappling with all these interwoven layers.
You can't just pick one point in time. You have to see the connections, the competing narratives, the deep questions about sovereignty, identity, memory.
Yeah.
It's all tangled together.
It's certainly not a simple story.
Far from it. It's this incredibly rich, sometimes painful, but always fascinating tapestry.
So, as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. Given that powerful claim, we started with the Ortoiroid assertion of being the root layer, the original sovereigns, and considering the unresolved debate about political status today. How do those ancient claims, those foundational ideas of identity and sovereignty continue to echo? How do they shape how Puerto Rico defines itself right now in the 21st century?
That's a deep question to sit with. How does the distant past continue to inform the present and the future?
Something that definitely resonates far beyond the shores of Borican.